Commit to Wealth Nation, welcome to the Commit to Wealth podcast. I'm your host, Juan Vargas. Today on the show, we have a couple guys that are going to help us out with title work. Whenever we guys need anything done with the title company, these are two guys that are going to be experts that definitely know what they're talking about here. So we have Josh Benporat. He is a commercial real estate attorney and associate VP of business development for Madison Title Agency, a commercial real estate company. He is a graduate of South Texas College of Law and currently resides in Houston, Texas. Sam Herskovitz has lived in Dallas since 2000. He previously was a commercial real estate broker for 10 years and was involved in multifamily and retail. He's the executive vice president for Madison Title and oversees the Southwest region for Madison Title. Josh and Sam, welcome to the show.
Hey, Juan. Well, good to be here.
Great to be here, Juan. Thanks for having us. Appreciate it.
It's awesome to have you guys. So for those of you out there, talking about title companies and everything that's involved, obviously it's not the sexiest subject that we want to talk about. Most of us want to hear about, properties and want to hear about, returns and, the nuts and bolts of, actual property. But, this is probably one of the most important, subjects and one of the most important podcasts that you guys have to listen to. So, I want to, first, get into your backgrounds. Tell us a little bit more about your backgrounds. We can start with you, Josh. Tell us a little bit more about your background, and then we'll go with Sam. And, tell us how you got to this position where you're at today.
Sure. So I was actually born in Dallas, but I made my way to Houston about 6 years ago, and I actually love it here in the city. Was doing about business for about 10 years prior. I was in the wholesale diamond business and a lot of outside sales, and then eventually transitioned to becoming an attorney. And always knew that real estate was like a passion of mine. And once I became that attorney, I worked in the commercial real estate legal world for a while and kind of wanted to combine my business experience with my legal experience and roll that up into the world of the commercial real estate industry. And title basically was the perfect answer to that. So for me, it was kind of a no-brainer going into the title world and commercial real estate here. And I specialize now in the multifamily part of the commercial real estate in Houston. And it's been great so far. I love it.
There you go. Thank you so much for sharing that. What about you, Sam?
Yeah, so I got into the real estate industry in 2003, brokering apartment complexes and shopping centers. And I've always been very passionate about the business, love the deal, love finding deals, sourcing deals, selling deals to owners and then selling it for them and really seeing the complete full circle. Real estate's always been very passionate about it and very enjoyable. In 2013, Madison Title, which is a national company based out of New Jersey, had opened a Dallas office to really service their clients in the Northeast doing business in Texas. In order to do business in Texas, you have to have an actual office. You can't do it out of another state. So they opened an office and were really struggling to try and make it happen, and approached me if I can take it over, being in the business for 10 years and really build it, use the existing clients, but really grow it into a real local Dallas business. And that's essentially what we did. The fascinating thing about going from brokerage to title was in brokerage, nobody really knows anything about the title company. As a matter of fact, most people don't know anything about the title company. But I can tell you for certain, when a deal doesn't close, everybody hates the title company. So it's kind of fascinating to come to the other side and say, what is it? What can I take from my deal-making experience? I'm a deal guy. So how do you go from being a deal guy to running a title business? And to take that same skill set of, if the deal's got to close. As a broker, you don't get paid if the deal doesn't close. So how can I find a way to make sure the deal always closes at the proper time, because time kills deals. The deal doesn't close, attorney fees goes up, buyer gets cold feet, seller gets cold feet, people get needy. Somehow the deal just unfolds. So you got to take the same attitude and mentality of being a deal guy and bringing that to a business that's not about necessarily making the deal, but making sure all the parties come together so that the deal can actually close. So as time has gone on and the business has really expanded, and we've built a wonderful business here in Dallas and now really got into the Houston market and grown that market as well. It's fascinating to teach people and work with them to say, hey, you're going to blame the title company. So let's get ahead of it and learn what exactly is going on here so you can have an understanding to really make sure that your deal closes when it needs to close.
Got it. Yes. That's another reason I was saying that is not the sexiest job or the sexiest, profession out there as far as, finding deals or like you were as being a broker, but it's probably one of the most important because, if you guys don't do things, right, then nobody is going to be happy. You got the brokers, you got the buyers, you got the sellers, you got everybody involved, the lender. So you guys are so important to this process. So, let's get this show started with the, I want to ask you.
Juan, if I may interject for a second. If you realize, a buyer and a seller or whoever it is, you work so hard to find a property. And then your attorney works so hard to get you the property, and your lender's working so hard to get the loan. Everybody's working hard to get you what you want. But at the end of the day, if it doesn't close and the title company can't pull it together, everybody's upset at the title company. And that's really our job. It's at the end to just put everyone together so everybody gets what they want.
Exactly. I love that. And you guys, have a huge responsibility, in doing that because there's so many parties involved and so everybody's kind of counting on you guys to be able to, come through. Right. So, it's a good thing, but I guess it could be stressful at times. That's why you guys are like, so important to the whole process. So let's get this thing started. And I want to ask you, what role does the title company play? Let's start with the basics and, just tell us, what are the roles and what are the the most important things that you guys focus on?
Sure. So let's just start with the beginning of the transaction. From the minute the contract is signed, the parties need to turn the contract into the title company. First thing, obviously, we need to do is send out wiring instructions. So the buyer can send in his wire, his earnest money deposit. It's got to be held with us in our trust account. Typically, we like to take the dates from the contract and send out a critical dates letter. Again, it's a non-binding agreement, but it's more staying in line with what a title company is being that third party of information to say, okay, this is when your title commitment's due as per the contract. This is when your due diligence is expired. This is when you have a financial contingency when that expires. Really to put everyone on notice and saying, okay, these are the dates. Let's work together. If anybody needs anything during that period of time, let us know. And then obviously, we'll go ahead and order a title commitment to start telling you about what's going on. And I'll let Josh, who can really chime in and tell us what exactly the title commitment is, why it's important, and stuff like that.
Sure. So what is a title commitment, right? It's basically a gathering of all the recorded documents against the property, okay? It's the preliminary stage of compiling everything that's really associated with the property that's eventually going to end up in the owner's policy, right? So it could be a lien, a restriction, a covenant, an easement, whatever it might be that's associated with the property that's in question. And it's what's going to really, again, like I said, it's the preliminary stages of what's going to end up in the owner's policy at the end of the day. So why is it called a commitment? It's because I'm committing to issue you a title policy, right? With all of these exceptions on it. For example, it could be a utility easement, could be attached to the property. If it wasn't recorded for whatever reason, and we happen to miss it, then it's not going to end up in the title policy at the end of the day, right? So these are things that we need to make sure are, that's our due diligence. We put it all in the commitment at the very beginning. And if we miss it, then it doesn't end up in the policy.
It's very, very, very important for a seller to know exactly what he's selling, but more importantly, what as a buyer, what am I getting? I think I'm getting this apartment complex. I think I'm getting the shopping center. But who else has a right to come in and out of the shopping center? What kind of restrictions are against the shopping center or the property? What can I do or can't I do? If I don't follow my restrictions and, let's say when the developer built the property and he said, you can only have trees or bushes at a certain length, or you got to have certain sidewalks, or you got to have certain fences. And I come in and say, you know what, I don't like that. I want to change that up. And I start doing different things. One day the city can come and say you're in violation of one of your restrictions. If I don't really go in and search that and understand what I'm buying, then how am I supposed to comply with what, what the property says I have to, what are the guidelines of maintaining this property? So it's very, very important just from the ABCs as to what am I selling and what am I buying? That's what really comes into a title commitment.
Got it. And what would you say is the average cost of a title commitment?
It's typically about 0.5%, but it really, in Texas, it's all regulated. So the state kind of puts out a rate sheet that'll tell you exactly as per, the purchase price of the property, what the price will be. And it's interesting is, two $5 million policies will cost more than one $10 million policy, because as the dollar amount goes up, percentage goes down a little bit less. So it's really hard. You can't look at a $5 million policy and say, oh, I'm buying a $15 million deal, multiply it by 3. It'll be a little less than that.
So it's all regulated. So which is good, because you don't want these prices to go out the roof, right? So, okay. So another question I have for you is, how does a title company determine if the seller, how does he determine if the seller has the right to sell it? What do you look for there?
Sure. Good question. So first thing what we're going to do is in the Schedule A of the title commitment, there's 3 schedules. There's a Schedule A, B, and C. Schedule A is going to have the vesting deed, okay? It's going to tell us exactly who owns the property. So the first thing we do is when we give a commitment to someone, we show them on the actual commitment, okay, ABC owns the property. So now that we know the entity owns it, that's great. Let's go look at the history and see who the other deeds were, making sure the chain of title is correct, that, XYZ sold it to ABC, now ABC is selling it to the next buyer. That's number one. We'll come back to that in a second. But how do we determine is, as we get closer to closing, the most important thing a title company does is we look at the corporate documents. We want to take a look at the operating agreements. We want to take a look at the partnership agreements. And most importantly, we want to get a resolution. We're actually in the middle of a deal right now where we're selling this. The seller is selling, and they sent around, their attorney sent out a resolution to all of the different parties to sign that the general partner, that they consent to the sale, and the general partner can now sign on behalf of this selling entity that they're selling the property. Well, it turns out one of the smaller partners had a side agreement with some other party, not in their operating agreement, where basically he assigned 45% interest of his interest over to a silent partner with some sort of loan attached to that. So the attorney knew about the attorneys knew about the side agreement, and they sent a resolution to the fellow who took over 45% of the interest. Well, all of a sudden he pipes up and says, I don't consent to the sale. I don't agree to sell.
Oh, wow.
Hold it up. So what happens now? What do you do? Everybody's calling the title company. And my answer is, hold on a minute. I didn't make this partnership agreement, right? I'm not the one who made some side agreement for some loan and giving over percentage of interest. And now this guy wants to make sure he's getting his money. A lot of money on the table.
Yes, it is.
So the easy answer is for me to say, okay, guys, you got a seller, you got an issue. So go figure it out and let me know, what you decide. But again, my answer is we got to close. We got to close, and we got to make sure we put everybody together. So what can we do to think out of the box to resolve or work with everyone? At least, number one, everyone's got to know we're going to do what we can. We're going to stay at the front of this, take the bull by the horns and say, let's make sure we get this closed. Now, I can't make it close, but I want everyone to know I'm working to get it closed. Because parties come together, people make deals happen when somebody's pushing to say, let's make it happen. So sure enough, our file closed yesterday, and we figured out a way to make it work with these 2 small parties. We're going to escrow their money separately and say, you guys figure it out after the fact. But the other 80% of the owners shouldn't have to wait just because you guys can't figure it out. And everybody agreed to that, but more importantly, everyone was appreciative to the fact that it's just an obstacle. We want to overcome an obstacle and make sure it gets closed. So again, it's about looking to see who has the authority to sign, who needs to sign, making sure their franchise is still not forfeited, it's still operating, because again, somebody's got ABC LLC and they haven't paid their franchise taxes, and then their entity doesn't exist in the state of Texas. How can they sell the property? ABC doesn't exist, they can't sell a property. So we got to make sure all these things are put together to really make sure, again, the buyer, think of it from a buyer side, he's got all his money, deposits with the seller, he's got deposits with the lender, he's got attorney fees. There's so much money being spent and so much work and due diligence that we really have to take the responsibility and the ownership to say, hey, we respect the hard work and the money people are spending. But we got to do everything we can to honor that and say, we're going to get your deal closed for you. That's the number one rule in my office. Every one of my closers know you absolutely can never tell a client no without calling me first, because we got to find a yes.
There you go. And I think that makes a big difference. The residential title companies, the guys that focus more on the residential side, and you guys focus a lot on the commercial. You guys are going to do the best that you can, regardless. But, it's so important to actually find a title company that focuses on what it is that your focus is. So for example, if you're doing multifamily, then find guys that are, that specialize in working with multifamily, right? Guys that owners, buyers and sellers of multifamily properties, right? So, that's one important thing. So, that was a great story that you shared with us. And that's why it's so important to have, key players on your team, like you guys. So I want to get to another question. What is a title policy? We hear that term all the time. Tell us a little bit more about what it is exactly, and tell us the cost of that.
Sure. So the title policy, again, as part of the regulated price that goes into whatever that percentage amount of the sales price of the property. And the policy itself really takes all the things that we already mentioned. Who's the owner? What restrictions do we not want on there? Or if there's a restriction that no longer applies to the property, whatever that might be. And we go ahead and we say, okay, whatever was in the initial commitment that we put together in the beginning, that was our preliminary stage, correct? Finally, that turns into the final negotiated agreed commitment that is now going to be the policy. This is what we're going to insure on for you.
So, and to give you a good example about that, Juan, is many times in multifamily, there's something called a LURA, a land use restriction agreement.
Right.
And that could be a case of where somebody decided to work out a deal where they get tax credits from the federal tax credits. And in return for that, they're going to have to rent the units to a certain low income and lots of paperwork and lots of restrictions to what kind of tenants you can rent to and how much money you can charge. And it really reduces the amount of rent you can charge based on the tax credits you receive. So most of the time, then when you do that, you file something called a land use restriction agreement, a LURA, against the property. And many times it's a 15-year with a 15-year renewal. What happens in a case when somebody gets foreclosed? Okay, this is one of the cases that happened when I was a broker. I sold an apartment complex I bought it for a client at the foreclosure sale. That was attached to the LURA was attached to the property. So what happens is once something forecloses on, all the liens go away, but you're never going to get a release from the people who signed on the LURA because it never really terminated on its own terms. So when a lender's coming in to loan on a property and you pull a title commitment, again, as Josh mentioned, the title commitment pulls all the recorded documents. The lender's going to look at that and say, hey, wait a minute, we're doing our underwriting based on a certain amount of numbers, but the fact that the LURA is on there is going to jeopardize your ability to grow the rents or get to where you want to get to. So we're not going to give you the loan unless that LURA is taken away. So we have to basically look through, again, another case study we had where we'll determine that the LURA is no longer in use because the property was bought through a foreclosure sale. And we'll have to get some type of affidavit or something from the sellers that say, yeah, we haven't been complying with this LURA over the last 3 to 4 years, ever since we bought it, what have you, and take it out of the commitment. Now, again, the record, it will always come up on record that it's there because there's no release. Sometimes it's hard to get the release signed. But there is something that's of record where we'll pull it out of the commitment and it won't show up on the policy. So the policy is something that's your commitment negotiated where you look at all the things that maybe don't necessarily apply to the property anymore, even though they're still recorded, but we make the determination that they don't apply and there's no risk. We pull it out and say, now you get your policy that doesn't have it. So it's the final negotiated commitment. The commitment means I commit to issue a policy with all of these documents relating to the property. This doesn't apply, so let's take it out. Now you're going to get your policy. A great example of what stays on a policy is, on every title commitment, we have liens. Somebody may have a mechanic's lien, but the number one lien on a property is going to be your mortgage. And that's why we say, okay, Schedule C says you owe $5 million to First National Bank or Bank of Texas, whatever it is, and you got to get us a payoff letter to pay it off. Well, if somebody's assuming a loan, they're buying a property through a loan assumption, what they're going to have to do, what's going to happen is they're not paying off the loan. So that requirement, that lien in Schedule C on the policy moves over to Schedule B as an exception that says you bought the property knowing there's a loan for 5, 10 million, whatever it is, because you did a loan assumption. Schedule C there is no Schedule C on a title policy. Title commitments have Schedule C. Schedule C is called the requirement section. Everything required to sell the property. You are required as a seller to pay off these mechanics liens. You are required as a seller to pay off your mortgage. You are required as a seller to prove you have the authority to sell this property. Because all of those items are requirements, there's no reason to have them on a policy, because if you fulfill those requirements, you sell the property. But what if the seller says, hey, I can't pay off my mechanics lien. I'm not interested in paying off my mechanics lien. And the buyer says, okay, I'll deal with it. I got a good enough price. I'll take it. Title company will say, we'll take that mechanics lien and put it on Schedule B. That's a great day in the world of everybody, but no lender's ever going to accept a title policy with a mechanics lien on it, especially since a mechanics lien has the foreclosure rights. So that's when you have a situation where if a guy says, I'm getting a great deal and I'll take the risk on a $100,000 mechanics lien because it's such a good price the seller has to go, just remember your lender isn't going to give you a loan. So we have to figure out a way, what risk, how bad is it, how much money can we escrow to say, let's make it work for you. Again, I want to make it work. I don't want to jeopardize my company, but I want to make it work. So this is something that can come up.
Yeah, I mean, that's a real life situation, that happens, I guess more frequently than you would think, than the average person would think. So, that's a great example that you just shared with us. Tell us, a little bit about a survey. What is the purpose of a survey? And, tell us what it is, first of all, and what is the purpose of it?
Sure. So the survey is really kind of the illustrated version of the legal description. Legal description is what goes in the initial preliminary report, that commitment that we were talking about at the beginning, that tells us everything about the property itself. The meets and bounds, the acreage, whatever it might be, and it tells us, it shows us in an actual illustrated format what that property looks like. It's like a map of the property, basically. And what does it do? It shows us any encroachments that might be on the property. Say your fence is actually impeding a little bit on your neighbor's property. That's what's called an encroachment. That can be a liability, actually. So it kind of highlights those encroachments. It can be also shows us, again, on a map, where the easements are. Where's the utility easement? Where's the water easement? Electricity easement? All of these things that, again, are very important to know and to recognize when you're looking at a property, where these things exist, because that goes down to liability, that goes down to usage. Very important things when you're looking to purchase a property.
Yeah, and that's great. As Josh said, when you look at the title commitment, you see all of the the easements are there, but where do they lie on the property? We once had a fellow selling a building with, I think it was a water easement and a water pipe going straight under the building. So basically that says the city has a right to come in and tear down the building and fix the pipe. I mean, who wants to buy a property like that?
No.
So now he got a chance to see exactly what's going on. But my question was, who builds a property like that? Right? That's
right.
Something doesn't make sense there. So when I started reading through everything and looking through everything, it came out that the city only has a right to maintain this pipe on each end of the building, but they can't tear down the building just to, something like that. So the point was the buyer got a chance to see exactly where it was. They got a chance to understand what rights the city has for the maintenance of this pipe, and understands the risk that's associated with it. So when you have a survey, it really brings it to life to say, this is where everything is. And one of the cool things about our company is we take all of the surveys after they're done, and we actually color coordinate every single easement together against the commitment. So when you take a look at the commitment or the survey, all of the exception documents are on the survey. So you'll look on the left side or the right side of the survey, and it'll say, water easement, we have that color coordinated in brown, and the brown will be on the survey, so you'll see it. Utility easement, green, that's the utility easement. So it really puts it together to show you exactly, is your building touching anything? How bad is your building touching anything? What risks do you have? What risks do we see? And stuff like that.
Got it. What's the typical time frame? If we do one, today, how long is that survey good for? And, how long does that usually last?
That's a great question. And the real answer is, for the Texas title insurance regulations, there is no timetable. As long as somebody provides a survey and the survey is, acceptable, then, as long as someone provides a survey and there hasn't been any change to the property, we're fine with that. So let's say a survey was done on the property 25 years ago. That's a pretty old survey, and we want to take a really good look at that survey to make sure there hasn't been any improvements, any buildings redone, any fences moved, any pools installed. Because as long as the property is 100% the same and there haven't been any new easements or anything added to the property, then the survey is the survey. It's there. We can have the seller sign a survey affidavit of no change, saying nothing's changed on the property. But if somebody brings you a survey and says, oh, well, the building was torn down, there was a fire, I redid this, I redid that, and there's been a lot of improvements, and obviously we're going to require a new survey, and it's in the best interest of the buyer to get a new survey. But more than likely, the lender is going to require the new survey.
So there's another term that we hear a lot, and that's like a survey endorsement. Tell us what that is and what does it cover?
Sure. So the survey endorsement in Texas, it's called shortages in area, which means we're basically ensuring the legal description that what you're buying, this is your property. This survey represents your property. That's what it is. But the age-old question is, if you have 3 different surveyors survey your property, no one's going to give you the exact same answer as far as, because it's measurements. You take a tape measure and I ask you to measure my room, someone might tell you it's, my office is a 10 by 16, and someone might tell you it's a 9.5 by 16.5, or a 10 by 16.5, or everybody's off by a drop. Measurements are never the same, especially when it comes to boundary lines and properties. So what we do is we ensure that the property is exactly, this is the property you're getting, with the exception of shortages in area. We might be off by a foot, we might be off by an inch. It's really hard to get it exact, but you know that the property's here. At least we know on a survey, when you put it there, you'll see your boundary lines, you'll know just about where the boundary lines are. And the boundary lines are really important to identify, because most people, the average person, when you're driving by a property and you see a fence, you say, oh, that's the boundary line. But sometimes your fences could be within the boundary line. Sometimes your fences could be outside the boundary line. Sometimes you'll have a property where it may only have half a fence. And then the property next door, whether it could be in a case of a nursing home where it backs up towards a shopping center, and people are, or a church, and people come in late on, Sundays, there's a lot of people coming to church, so they start parking on the grass and moving in. Next thing you know, you take a look at the survey closely, you realize that people are parking, 5-10 feet into your property. But because the fence is closer in, or the fence is only halfway, they assume it belongs to the church. So you really got to understand where your boundary lines are and how to go and say, hey, that's great. As a property owner, I think it's awesome. People go to church, and I love the fact that they use my property. Other people may say, nope, I want to charge the church money, but at least it's out there, and each person can make their own decision based on their faith and their monetary decisions, if they want to charge for it, whatever it is. Again, it's giving you the options to make your own decisions. That's why a survey is so important. But the survey coverage tells us, yes, this is the property. What you're buying, that's what it is.
Another term that is, thrown out there a lot is the T19. I came across this as well, on my the property I just sold. But what is a T19? Is actually a T19.1. But what is that, and why is it important for a survey to issue that?
Yeah, so the T19 is basically the belts and suspenders, as they like to say. It's for restrictions, mineral rights, and easements. Most important thing is when you buy a property, we're going to do everything we can to make sure we're getting, let's say with restrictions, we're getting all the restrictions. We're getting everything on record. We tell you on the title commitment, you can't paint your property blue. It's got to be green, whatever it is, that's the restriction. So let's just say, for instance, there's some documents we missed, and now a year later, somebody comes and says you're violating the restrictions. Well, you come back to the title company and say, hey, you guys never put that restriction in my policy, and I bought T19.1. It's a nice, pretty premium. That's basically telling the underwriter or the title agency, hey, you guys gave me the T19.1. There was no mention of this restriction. I got a claim against you. But what's really important to know is that if we took exception to the restriction and we're really clear about it, then you're not covered by it. But the T19.1 gives you the extra coverage. But the more important one is, let's talk about encroachments, okay? Many times when somebody has a survey, and the survey will show that the property is encroaching into a utility easement, or the fences are encroaching into the neighboring property. As a title company, we're going to make a decision with the underwriter. What's the risk? I mean, just the building's, an inch, 2 inches, a foot. I don't know, 1 foot out of a 10-foot easement. What's the chances that the utility utility company's going to have to come and, chisel out part of my building? Do we think there's a risk? Well, we say, you know what, there's no risk there. So we decide we're going to remove from the title policy, we're going to make sure we don't take an exception to the fact that that building encroaches the easement. If you buy the T19.1, there's your basically your suspenders telling you, you know what? Hey, the utility company showed up. They said we got to shave off part of your building. I got a claim against you. There's your T19.1. So that's really what it's for. It's for the restrictions, the encroachments, and of course, if there's any damaging to the minerals, which minerals is really a whole separate topic for the state of Texas. But that's really why that is. And it's just when you're spending, again, it all goes down to the fact, we all know how hard it is to buy deals. I mean, I've been part of deals. I sold deals for 10 years. I've been involved in a lot of different partnerships. It takes so much to find the right deal. You got to raise the money. And in this market, it's a little easier to do that, but you got to get your lender, you got to get the fees, you got to get your lawyer. You put all this time and effort in. When you buy the deal, you want to just put your focus on the operations, collect the rent, make your cash flow, get it ready to sell, get it ready to refinance. You don't want to be busy, sitting down the road. Well, I got a problem with this easement or that easement. That's why it's so important. Know what you're buying. That's how we started. That's how we ended. Know what you're getting. Know what you're buying. Know what your risks are, because the last thing you want to be busy with are these side things. You're buying a property to make money. That's why we do this business. It's about making money. So let's work hard to make the money and allow the people that are there to protect you and make sure you're getting what you need so that you can focus on the things you need to focus on. And if, God forbid, something happens where you got a claim, it's important to have a title company that you have a relationship with, because, again, I want to be able to say, hey, that's an issue. I'm going to take care of it for you, work with you on it, not just punt and say, yeah, that's not my fault. I want to make sure you got someone, again, to rely on so that you can focus on what you need to focus on. I got to focus on making sure these small things are taken care of. You got to focus on making money and building your property. And that's really the core of the relationship. Got it.
So you already kind of added it to this, and you kind of, discussed it right now, but what would you say is the number one mistake that you see, both, new and experienced, buyers and sellers, what would you say is the number one mistake that people make out there, and what can they do to avoid it?
I would say the number one mistake is in the newer people not really understanding tax prorations. I think that, many times when somebody buys a property, in Texas, the tax bills come out, the assessments come out in May, but the bills don't come out till November. Many times when the bills come out, when the assessments come out, lots of people are disputing them and arguing and hiring different companies to work on lowering the taxes. Many times they're very successful at that. But when you're doing a proration or you're doing a closing, especially in July or August, there isn't a tax bill, there's just an assessment. But the only thing you have is the tax bill from the year before. You want to prorate the taxes based on the year before. Many times in the purchase and sale agreements, they just say, let's use the taxes based off 2017. Well, in 2018, the assessments went up much higher, but we don't have a tax bill to do a proration off. The parties agreed in the PSA to do it off 2017. I can't go in and start opening a can of worms and jeopardize the deal. Hey guys, Mr. Buyer, you're going to get a big tax bill down the road, and you agreed on 2017. You guys agreed on that. What am I supposed to do? I represent both parties. Yep. I'm everybody's friend, so I can't make enemies. So I would say part of that is really making sure that you understand the taxes, so you work together as part of your negotiations and understand. Again, it's all about understanding what you're buying. Know your taxes. Make sure you, as a seller, really make sure your partnership agreements are in order, because you don't want to have a situation where the title companies, really trying to figure it out at the end when you got estate partnerships or heirs or deaths or whatever it is. Just really make sure that stuff is together, because that really makes the closing smooth. We got to make sure that the seller is the seller and the seller can sell. And if you got things that are really out there and not getting disclosed, and you start getting towards closing and the paperwork's not there, it really makes it challenging. So I would say, if you know you're going to sell, really make sure your partners are on board. Make sure any family or people who have, anyone who's inherited something or whoever's part of the transaction is really going to be on board a part of the sale.
Great. What is a good tool, source, or platform or website that you guys would recommend to others that'll be beneficial to those buyers and sellers?
Well, you can always go on our website. It's MadisonTitle.com. That has the rates calculators. It'll give you some different tools about title itself and different case studies. tell you about some of the other services we do, like cost segregation. That's basically the IRS allows you to depreciate your asset, I think a commercial asset over 39 years, or 37 to 39 years. And we have a whole team specialized called Madison Specs that work with you to accelerate your depreciation and really put it down into 5 years to allow you to benefit off the depreciation and increase your cash flow. If you're someone who's a short-term holder, it's really a great thing to do. And that's a great service we have. If you're someone buying shopping centers or shopping centers or office buildings, we have a lease abstracting team that also does CAM audits, financial underwriting, financial due diligence. So there's lots of different things, services that we provide clients as part of an additional feature to help benefit the relationships of Madison Commercial Real Estate Services with all our clients.
Sweet. And that is MadisonTitle.com?
Yep.
Okay, sweet. Okay, well, where can Commit to Wealth Nation go to contact you guys and find out more about Madison Title? You know, besides MadisonTitle.com, is there an email or phone number?
Sure. Yeah. Best way to reach me here as the Houston rep out here. My email is J and then my last name, BENPORAT at MadisonTitle.com. That's JBEN like Benjamin, P as in Peter, ORAT as in Thomas at MadisonTitle.com. And a phone number to reach me at would be 713-300-8594.
Okay. Well, sweet. That is simple enough. Okay, guys. Well, I appreciate your time. I appreciate everything that you have shared. You know, obviously it's a lot of, important, key subjects that we talked about here today. But nonetheless, it's, like I said, it's very important for those guys to know. And so yeah, thank you so much. And you guys have a great rest of your day.
You too, Juan. I really, really appreciate it. Thanks so much.
Thank you guys. Appreciate it.
Take care.